Hi, everybody. Welcome to Primo Perspective. I'm Kristen Borth.
And I'm Lorie Mills.
Lorie, we're going
Yes.
to be talking about a really sad story today, but I want to talk about it because I think there's some confusion on the patient side. And I think that there's some support or some ideas that we could give for the hospital side. So I know that you've heard this story, but for our listeners, I was reading and listening to my news, and across the top came toddler found dead but pronounced alive in the morgue. And I was
Yeah.
like, what? So I clicked on it immediately, started reading this story. And a toddler, little Vincent, was found in the pool. He was estimated to be in the
hmm
pool for about 5 minutes. His parents rushed him to the hospital, and police were there. And police kept saying to the nurse and the doctor that they kept thinking that he was breathing or taking gasps of air.
Yes.
And there's two components of these articles that I was reading. That one nurse kept telling this doctor, I keep hearing him gasp. I think that he's breathing. And the doctor turns to the nurse and says, I went to medical school. I know how to do my job. Stop. And
Right.
declares, pronounces him dead. So they sent him down to the morgue.
hmm
And
Right.
the medical examiner then comes upon that. Talk about an interesting moment as a medical
Yes.
examiner. That would be my nightmare. But hears him gasping, sends him for an MRI, finds out that his brain is still active, but that he has issues. And I'm going to
Right.
pass it over to you right after I say the one sentence I was searching for the entire time I was reading these articles was, what caused the brain injury? Was it the water, the pool, or was it a malpractice type situation?
So, yeah, you and I have not really discussed this, but I will tell you with them having a recorded statement of the provider saying what he did, that hospital's going to have to write a check. There,
Oh, my goodness.
irregardless of where the brain damage come from, if it come
Yeah.
from the pool or if it come from the medical care, that statement in itself is guaranteed that family will get a settlement. You cannot
Yeah.
have that type of attitude and not expect it. Um, I worked with a risk manager one time, and she could diffuse almost any situation. So, when something like that happened, she was like the first person they would put to go have a conversation with the patient's family or with the patient
Yeah.
or whatever, anything that happened for a risk management standpoint. Um, but I also want to say, my thought on that is you have a provider who will not listen to educated staff who is in the
Yeah.
room. So, what did the staff do? Did they pursue it further? Did they go find another physician and tell them, or find the chief medical officer and be like, this is what's going on? Or did nursing call their DON and explain, we've got this situation. I need somebody to come to the ER.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to see this besides us. That in itself made me wonder, what did
Mm-hmm.
the staff do? Now, granted, the
Yeah.
doctor, I was like, I'm kind of furious with him that he had
Right.
that, because that made me wonder, does he trust his staff that works with him?
Mm-hmm.
Does he trust the staff that's working in the ER with him? Another question is this a known trait of this provider? Does he always blow off nursing staff or,
Yeah.
belittle people that try to go against maybe what he said? Is that a tendency for him to do that? And you can bet, if he has those tendencies and there's records of other things like that happening in the past, that he's definitely going to have to write a check himself, not
Oh.
only the hospital.
I, I definitely think I definitely think that he should be in deep water. I mean,
hmm
but then I have this whole thought, and obviously we understand components of medical care, and that's why we talk about it. That's why we do this.
Right.
But at the same time, I worked in an ER and in a nursing home. And I can tell you, as a parent, the stink that I would put up
Oh,
if I was hearing a police officer and a nurse
yep.
or other, medical professional say that they were, they were hearing gasps. Be like, what are you doing? Can you check this?
Right.
I would be pushing the doctor as well. So it made me
Yes.
wonder on the patient side, do they know that they're empowered? Because we've been doing some crossover episodes where we're talking about, patient questions. I wonder if they know that that's something that they can do as well. Do they feel empowered to do that?
No, they don't. They don't realize that there are patient advocates that work in the facility.
Yeah.
And usually they're going to be in your risk management department, but they're going to be patient advocates that you can call when you're having a problem at the hospital, and those advocates will go up and talk to the patient's family. They'll talk to the patient if the patient's, where they can then speak, and they will investigate. And then they'll bring that back. And a lot of times, I've been in those meetings where cases were discussed afterwards, and it was brought back. And sometimes the risk manager would say, "We're wrong. We're wrong."
Oh.
And I've been in that situation. And no, this is not the story I'm going to tell you, but this is another
I'm waiting.
story. I've been in that situation where I had to report the ER for just really reprehensible treatment that I got as a patient. And I struggled with that because I'm always about protecting my docs if they're doing what they're supposed to do and all. But I had to wrestle with that, and I actually formally reported the hospital I worked at, their ER, to risk management. And I had to sit down with the chief medical officer from the ER and the risk manager and myself, and Sam was in there with me, and we had a discussion about what we thought had happened. And the ER director at first was kind of belligerent, but then the risk manager looked at him and she said, she told him what was wrong with her when she came in the door. They knew. She already had her lab work done. Everybody knew what was wrong with her. And y'all let her lay there all day without giving her any insulin. And she developed encephalopathy, got to where she couldn't talk. And so it's very important that we understand that patients have rights. And that was not my right just because I worked there. That was my right as a patient.
Yeah.
I needed to advocate. Sometimes patients aren't in the position to advocate for themselves because they're too sick or they're unconscious.
Yeah.
But or they're a child. You need someone there with you that can advocate for you as well. And make sure, because let's face it, bad things happen everywhere. We're humans. There are mistakes that happen. And that's
unfortunately
sad to say, and it's unfortunate that it does happen, but it happens. We are humans. But for a mistake to happen because someone intentionally ignored a situation is a whole nother issue.
Yes. And I feel like the media in this specific situation, and don't get me wrong, it's atrocious, but I feel like they are especially trying to activate that patients, get treated this way at hospitals all the time. This happens all the time at the hospitals. And maybe it's, some of the articles that I picked, because I tried to choose from a variety of news sources to get a really perspective on what they were saying. But I felt like a lot of them were very critical of hospital activities. And I'm not saying that it's not warranted, because in this situation and the trauma that those parents were probably going through, that kept them from maybe being as clear-headed as maybe they would like to think they would be, or I would like to think I would be.
Yeah.
But it just, like, I hope that somewhere we can find this balance of this is not the hospital's end game with patients.
No,
And,
no, by far, no, it's
you know,
not.
this is a unique experience that, like you said, does happen more often than we would like it to and is unfortunate. But this is a unique experience of a certain situation, a certain
Right.
provider, certain staff, even because I know so many uh, nurses, and I love them for this, but I know so many nurses that are not like, sit back
Right.
and wait because the doctor says to do this or doctor says this is what you
Right.
should do. They are strong for a reason. And I
Yes.
love them for it because I don't know that I would always be so upfront.
So, and
So
that is a lot of it. At times, is your nurses have to be very strong because they have to be able to advocate for their patients. I've had nurses advocate for me
Mhm.
as a patient because I would come in so very sick. One
Yes.
of the first times I went in, I was so very sick, they thought I was drunk or that I had been drinking. And
Mm.
it's because my blood sugar wasn't high at all. It was normal, but I was in DKA. So the physician, one of the things he asked me, he was livid. He come in the room and he said, "So when is the last time you've had a drink?" And I was like, "I had a glass of wine about 3 weeks ago." I mean, and I was being
My
sincere.
word.
That was, but the nurse, she could never get him to put orders in for some medicine and stuff. And so she come in and she put, I don't know what she did, but anyway, she got my medicine. She said, "You've got to have this, and we're going to get it." And
Oh
so
my.
she got me medicine. But that nurse advocated for me,
Yeah. Yeah. And I
and
mean, I've
yeah,
seen them do that so many times.
hmm
And especially it was interesting because in the nursing home, you didn't have providers rounding often. They came
right,
in, once a week sometimes, depending on the provider. So you might have a provider there every single day, but it's a provider for a specific resident. And so I remember watching those nurses, this is what's been happening the last 5 days.
hmm
You need to do this, doctor. And the doctor's like, well, I don't see that happening. And they're like, but it's been happening every single day. Look at the
yeah,
chart. It's documented. And they advocate where,
right,
patients, families can't always be there to do that. But
right,
I do. I have to give our nurses kudos because
yes,
it, they know their stuff and they're pushing for the betterment of patients too. But I think that can also, that strongness from our
hmm
nurses can come across like they're against patients as well, because I don't always come across warm and fuzzy when you're trying to get things done and the nurses and the patient's feeling terrible and the nurse is just like, I got to get this done. And it's not
right.
always warm and fluffy.
Fluffy. No, it's not. And you talked about people perceiving or patients perceiving bad care in
Yeah,
facilities and things like that. We have a lot of quality standards that
we do.
hospitals must follow, and we may be hitting all the marks on those quality standards, which are for good care, but
Yeah,
your patient may perceive because they had to wait too long for medication,
yeah,
or that no one was able to come help them get up to go to the restroom, as soon as they buzzed and things like that. And there's a
yeah,
whole big thing about short staffing and all. So
yeah,
sometimes, and I'm not saying it that in this case at all, but sometimes when people perceive they're getting bad care, it's not really that they're getting bad care. They're just not getting the immediate attention that they perceive they should be getting as a patient. I
yeah.
think that's it. And I've been guilty of that too. I've been guilty of that. So I want to give you a statistic. I looked it
Okay.
up. How often have patients been pronounced dead and come back to life?
Oh my.
It
I feel
is
like this is going to be way
actually,
higher than I think it should be.
no, it's actually very, very rare. But
Really?
yes, but there are 81, up to 81 documented cases of this actually happening. And I don't know what that time frame was. One study said it had happened 60 times in 40 years. So I mean, it's
Yeah.
a big thing. But the name of it is Lazarus phenomenon.
Really? Oh, I didn't
Yes,
know that.
that's what they named it. Yes, Lazarus phenomenon. Um, so now I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you something that I don't know that you know this. So our cohort, Vicky, who works with us, her mother, and let me say this, I got permission to tell this story before I'm telling it.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. So Vicky's mother was very sick and in the hospital. Very, very, very sick. She'd been in the hospital for, I believe, weeks at this point.
Mm-hmm.
She coded. She died. The doctor pronounced her. The doctor was in a conference room with the family, talking to them, telling them, their mother had passed away, what had happened, da 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
The nurse comes in and tells the doctor, this is several minutes later, she has a pulse.
For real.
For real.
And our very own Vicky?
Our very own Vicky.
Oh my goodness.
Then they rushed her mother to surgery. And so I'm telling you this too, because I asked Vicky, I said, would you be comfortable doing a podcast with Kristen and I to talk about this? Because it is such a rare phenomenon, but it does happen. And there was no malpractice discussion at all in the hospital with this, because it truly, it happened just the way she was telling it. I mean, they worked on her, they pronounced her. He was talking to the family, and the nurse comes and gets him. She's alive. So then they took her to surgery, and I'm not sure what surgery she had, but she lived another few weeks. And I mean, she was like talking and laughing and enjoying her family's company. She was still in the hospital, and she did eventually die. I want to say 2 weeks later, maybe. But yes, that did happen. So, it's rare, but it happens.
Oh my word. Well, that gives me so much hope for, sweet little Vincent's family, because they're talking about in the news, they're talking about how they don't know what kind of brain damage this could cause, but it's extensive therapy that's going to need to happen. And, at that age, their brains are forming and there's so many big things, but that gives me hope that he can go on to live a full life. I mean, it's a miracle anyways that he, not that necessarily, I'm going to say this, not necessarily that it was caught, because I do know the protocols that are in place, because I have to check them every time. So not necessarily that it was caught, but that it was dismissed in some ways, or put off in some ways, and then brought back around, and to show that, he is still here. I mean, talk about a roller coaster for his family, but that would just put so much, it would fill my heart with so much hope. Mm-hmm. And then hearing other stories like Vicky's mother, where she's talking, and this was after minutes. Wow. Yeah. Oh my word. That's amazing.
It is. So, and I'll throw this out there. You and I both are professed Christians, and we believe in miracles and things like that. Yes. And to me, that is a miracle. It's a miracle. And it is. That, and we don't know, like you said, what kind of brain damage Vincent's going to have, but it could be that he recovers fully. Hopefully, that would be my wish. And that's what we could pray for. Yeah. So it's very interesting cases like this to look at. You've seen the books where, was it 7 Minutes in Heaven, when the little kid died, and there's several different ones that I've watched movies or read those books, and it's amazing for that to be that way. I don't discount miracles at all. I still believe that miracles can happen, and sometimes they come in forms like this, and I think it's hard for us to accept it nowadays that could truly be a miracle from God. I agree. So there's a lot to unpack in this, and I'm looking forward to waiting on how this unfolds.
I want to follow this. I want to see how it unfolds with the hospital setting, and how it unfolds for Vincent and his family as well. So let's take another detour. Okay. And let's talk about the hospital side, because as a hospital, you are managing so many different patients coming in. And when one scenario one situation, one encounter, launches you into the media, launches you
Right.
into the news. It's chaos for the hospital just in general.
Yeah.
But it has to still underlying be business as normal because you are still treating patients while this, media storm is happening. So from your opinion, what do you think hospitals either do really well or should do really well? And where do you think they could use some, good support?
Well, I think part of the problem is the patient or the patient's representatives, they can say anything they want to say, and it's perceived as that's the way it is.
Yeah.
But because of HIPAA and other compliance and other things, hospitals can't come out and tell you a lot of times really what happened because they're bound by these rules and regulations. And so it's hard for them other than to come out and say, we did everything we could. Our staff performed appropriately. The patient, we don't know what happened. They can't really give any details. They can just come out and say, and I've been in that situation to where patients have gotten on Facebook and wrote really disparaging posts about providers where I worked or providers that I knew, or they've got on and done Facebook Live and would be complaining about, what happened at the hospital and this, that, and the other. And I think sometimes myself, I really want to get on there and I want to comment back and say, well, this is why this is happening. This is why it took 2 weeks to get your CT prior authorized, and you had to have it in 2 weeks. It's because of your insurance company. We want to get on there and tell those things, and we really can't. One of my clients is a small rural facility, and people are always talking about the bad things that happen at the little hospital. And I always want to tell them, guys, bad things happen at every hospital.
Yeah.
But you just hear about it more in a small town and a small hospital than you do in the big hospitals. The other thing is like I said, patients just perceive sometimes that things are bad care when it's not really bad care. It just takes longer than the patient thinks it should. Yeah. I've wanted to write a letter to the editor at this facility I'm at now, because this is my heart. I've been at this facility. I've worked there for years and years, back in the early 2000s. And I want to write a letter to the editor and just say, okay, yeah, you fuss about your hospital, but where else are you going to go? Your next closest hospital is 30 miles away in one direction, 55 miles in another direction, and 82 miles in another direction. And there are countless lives that have been saved at this rural hospital. There's some stories. Oh my gosh, amazing stories. And these patients have been saved, and nobody really talks about that. Nobody gets on Facebook a lot of times and promotes the great things that have happened to them at this hospital. It's always the bad things. Recently someone had made a post on Facebook about some things that had happened there, and they had to have a full-blown investigation. And when they got down to the bottom of the investigation, what was portrayed on Facebook is not actually what happened.
Yeah.
And
I do think that all in of itself, it points me to where I think that a lot of hospitals should invest a little bit more than they do. And I understand, money's tight, it's hard, but I do think that hospitals need to do a better job at being their own social media advocate.
Right.
So you can have a Facebook page or a Instagram page or whatever, you can have those, but if you are not promoting of the improvements that you're doing, these don't even have to be the compliance, talking about the hot topics that may be coming out in your hospital. If you are talking about what you're doing to be better for your community or serve your community, I feel like that goes a long ways, not to stop, the attacks, but to showcase that you're putting the best foot forward. And I do feel like most hospitals are doing that. During COVID, this became a really big thing. A whole book was written by a nurse that said that, hospitals were declaring patients were deceased with COVID when it wasn't COVID, and they were letting them die because of COVID. And there was all this stuff. And so I feel like some of that and what we've learned from that, which I don't know that experience, so I don't know if it was right or wrong, but I feel like some of that we should learn from and push forward. Be like, okay, well, how will we combat this? Let's put in some time now to get some social media, because that's how a ton of people get their news now. And let's put in the time now so that we can do better at showing our community what we're trying to improve, what we're trying to do for them.
Yeah. And, you're talking about during COVID, and at the facility I was at during COVID, there was I believe, a journalist from Arizona. I know that's kind of a coincidence, but it was from somewhere out west, called our ICU medical director, because there was a patient, and that patient's family had been putting stuff out on social media about the hospital wouldn't do this. They were wanting the hospital to give the patient ivermectin and all this kind of stuff. And the patient, the hospital finally, they did everything they could do. And I want to say they even used ivermectin. But the patient died anyway. And it was just one of those things that COVID was just something we didn't know anything about, and I saw physicians and nurses all during that time, because I worked in a hospital during COVID. And they pulled non-clinical staff to go work in the hospital, like doing temperatures at the doors, working in the nurses stations and things like that. And providers were so just downtrodden because they were doing everything they knew to do and doing other things that they never thought they would do, trying to save people's lives. And then they have these reporters from, out west. We even had one physician who was followed home by patient's family. Like,
Really?
We had some physicians that had to be escorted out of it was mostly our critical care physicians, had to be escorted to their cars after they were getting off work, because there had been death threats and all kind of threats made against them, because you couldn't go see your family member because of COVID. And I think we just kind of all just got so bundled up in the anxiety of all of it that we let our humanistic side go. And I don't know that we've gathered all that back yet. But like you said, yes, we've got to figure out for hospitals to promote the good things that they do. Bad things happen. But how do we promote the good things they do? I also do think that healthcare facilities should be more accepting of responsibility when it is their fault.
I agree.
We screwed up. We screwed up. And yes, it's going to cost you when you do that. But the risk manager I was talking about earlier, she said that it was easier to talk to a family if you admitted what happened was your fault and wrong, and they were less likely to sue than if you adamantly denied it, knowing that you had some fault in it. If you adamantly denied it, the patients were more likely to sue than not.
Which totally makes sense to me, because I definitely trust a facility or an organization more that admits that something is wrong and it was their fault and they're going to fix it. I immediately think, oh, that organization, which may sound weird, but that organization's more self-aware. They're aware that they're not perfect. They're not trying to put on, this showcase of, oh, everything is great, everything is perfect. And so I immediately trust them just a little bit more. And I think it is hard for hospitals to do that because so much in the hospital is life or death, you
Right.
know, and it's, I mean, I've seen family members, I've seen my docs, crumble after a situation, uh, um, with a patient,
Right.
and them reacting in a very human way because they were trying everything that they could.
Hmm.
The patient still, coded. The patient still was died in the end, and they tried everything. And it's the patients don't always see that. And I think COVID turned the theory on a head where you're supposed to go to the ER with somebody all the time, never show up by yourself.
Right.
And that was a whole thing. And so I think that's partially why patients were really frustrated, is like, well, you've been telling me for decades don't go to the ER by myself. And
Right.
now I'm supposed to leave them here to just be watched by you in this crisis. Like, I get the frustration. That was such a high stress time,
It
but
was.
it's almost like it's almost like some of our docs have PTSD, and
They do.
and haven't come down from that time
Right.
period to go into situations like this.
Yeah. And I think since COVID, I'm pretty sure I've read a lot of articles about this, that the violence toward healthcare workers has just
Increase.
exploded.
Yeah.
And I worked in healthcare, I work in healthcare, but I didn't necessarily run the risk of a patient hitting me or, you know,
Yeah.
pulling a gun on me or stabbing me like our
Mhm.
nursing and our clinical people are seeing now.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to wonder, does fear make you want to just kind of distance yourself from
Yeah.
those patients?
Yeah.
And maybe they don't get the care that they need because you're afraid.
Yeah.
That's a possibility,
It
especially if it's somebody
totally.
that's been violent, or someone that comes in and they're
Yeah.
violent. What happens in those situations?
Yeah. Yeah, totally different topic, but we do see that a lot when you've got the 5150s that come in, and maybe they are a little bit out of control. And
Hmm.
so providers tend to pull back because it's like, oh, you're blowing that out of proportion. Oh, calm down, because they have to de-escalate the situation. And
Right.
some of the time, those kind of spiral out of
Hmm.
control. So yeah, I truly, I don't know. My heart goes out to the whole situation, and
Hmm.
even somewhat to this doctor that made a horrific mistake, because now he's going to live with that forever, and going to deal with that. But also, the staff and the parents, and
Right.
Vincent himself, and so yeah, I think there's so much to this that you can unpack, and that you could look at it and read it from all different avenues and be
Hmm.
like, oh, well, this was the hospital's fault. And it was. But there's just so much to it when it
It
comes
is.
to.
It is. And like you said, this is going to be a continuous story over several months,
Mhm.
most
Yeah.
likely. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it happens. But I do think that hospitals, we are going to have to get to a point that we're not so closed off to the
Yeah.
world, and that we defend what needs to be defending, but we also accept responsibility for our failures.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. Well, as
So,
we wrap up, do you have any closing
yes.
thoughts?
No, other than I'm excited to do the podcast with Vicky, me, you, and Vicky, to talk
Yes.
about her story, because I knew that was going to get you, because I didn't think you knew that, and it
No,
just
I
fit
didn't know
right in
that.
with this. Yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to do that. But
That'll
I
be
guess
fun.
my biggest thing, because I talk about this, is advocacy. Advocacy is
Mhm.
so important for yourself, or have somebody that can advocate for you, to
Yes.
make sure that, and if if something like that ever happened again, I would like to think that the staff or the family would escalate it further than
Yeah.
just that physician, and get others involved that can do something about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I'll just say that in closing, little Vincent, you're in our hearts and our prayers. And, the whole family just hoping for the most miraculous outcome ever. So, that just, that would, be the icing on the cake. And, so yeah, that wraps us up for today, Lorie.
Wraps us up. All right, Kristen.
All
We'll
right.
talk to you later.
Sounds
Bye-bye.
good. Bye.